All right, hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Tonight is Saturday, September 11th, 2021. This is your daily tropical update, and tonight we look across the Atlantic Basin to no active storms, thankfully. Hurricane Larry's last advisory was this morning. The system raced off to the north, impacted just off screen here parts of Newfoundland as a pretty strong storm. It was still a hurricane at the time. It's our first hurricane landfall since 2011 when Hurricane Igor hit the region. And wind gusts yesterday were pretty impressive, about 100 to 110 miles an hour in most locations, or at least some locations, and a lot of wind damage and some coastal flooding. It was definitely a significant weather event for the region. Larry moved off to the cold waters, and he is going to be dumping some snow over Greenland tomorrow and Monday, but he is out of our hair. Across the rest of the basin, guys, well, it is peak hurricane season, and we have plenty more to talk about. Again, no active storms, but in no particular order, we have a broad area of low pressure over the southern Gulf of Mexico. Our biggest player tonight, this one is expected to develop as it moves towards Texas and Louisiana, and a major rainfall event expected this week along the western Gulf Coast. We have a little tropical wave out here in the central Atlantic moving towards the Bahamas, and the system could be in the vicinity of this region early this week, and some impacts potentially to the East Coast later this week, but a lot of uncertainty remains. We have a wave that's already left Africa over the Cabo Verde Islands, still has about a 50-50 shot at becoming a tropical depression before it looks like strong upper level winds will make that less favorable. We have a very strong wave moving off of Africa, this likely to become a long track storm of some consequence to the U.S. potentially as it moves south and then eventually more northward as we go into next weekend. And then we also have a broad non-tropical low pressure sinking down near Spain and Portugal today. This could become a subtropical storm at some point this week. A lot of stuff. A lot of stuff. All right, so let's go ahead and start with Invest 94L. This is the one of big consequence. Hurricane Center's evening map showing you all of our players once again. Five, count them, five different areas highlighted, but 94L is our biggest player. 90% chance of development tonight. Hurricane Hunters set to investigate the area tomorrow, and it looks like we will have a tropical depression on deck tomorrow night or early on Monday. Tropical depression 14 waiting in the wings. Probably be the next system down here. And evening satellite imagery as we go from sunrise to sunset. Broad cyclonic rotation across this region. You can see the rotation all the way down here across the eastern Pacific and all the way up here in the Bay of Campeche. And within this, you have a surface trough that's becoming a little better organized. And what you're going to eventually see is circulation begin to cut off and begin to rotate just in this region. And then from there, low pressure will develop, and this will consolidate as it moves generally northwest and then eventually recurve some type to the north. Now, the Hurricane Center, again, expects this to become a tropical depression sometime soon. We've had enhanced southeasterly winds today that has increased this wave and really took the wave from more of a leaning wave to more of a standing wave. And this is beginning to force that cyclogenesis, and that overall pattern is beginning. The other thing we see is the upper trough that's been really wrecking the storm the last few days is quickly lifting up out of the air. You can see the expanding high clouds moving northward towards the northern Florida region, towards southern Georgia, and towards the Louisiana coastlines because we had a deep upper trough today that has been filling, and the trough is more like this now, and this trough is gradually lifting, and the wind direction is changing, and it looks like the upper level conditions over this wave are improving, and this is where we do expect that development to begin. GFS does kind of show this right here. GFS shows this wave really consolidating, but the GFS continues to show us a system that consolidates to the southern edge of the envelope. Again, the question is, do we get something forced more up here? Do we get something forced more down here? There's more thunderstorm activity down here tonight, but it looks like some of the forcing for the vorticity may be a little bit further north, so it depends, which side of the overall wave this thing wants to actually focus its development in. But that is important because when we're looking at the potential threat that this next tropical system will bring to Texas and Louisiana, the primary headliner is rain. It is going to bring a lot of rain, whether it is a strong storm or a weak storm. There's really going to be no difference whether this is a sloppy tropical depression that never gets itself together or if it's a bona fide hurricane or anything in between. This will bring a lot of rain. The overall pattern and the overall tropical moisture surge coming is going to bring the region a lot of rain. The question really is, do we get just a weak rainmaker or do we actually get a bona fide wind and surge threat along with the rainfall? The GFS is becoming more aggressive with this and more consistent with the development. A couple models runs yesterday just kind of had a weak kind of nothing burger just kind of slip into Mexico, but now there's more support for a well-organized storm moving along the coast and up into parts of eastern Texas and Louisiana. You can see the GFS by Monday night has a fairly well-developed tropical storm moving northward. and then actually as it weaken a little bit as it moves towards Houston, East Texas, and Western Louisiana due to some wind shear. European kind of shows the same thing. The European has actually moved a little bit closer to coast, but still has a fairly good system developing. The whole rub here is, does the system stay very close to land and stay weaker, or does it come a little bit further offshore, buying itself not only more warm water, more time over that warm water, but also a longer track over the warm water before it makes landfall? This is the difference in, say, a decent hurricane getting into this region or a weaker tropical storm. A weaker storm is more likely to track towards South Texas. A stronger storm or a hurricane is likely to track more towards the Houston area or even Western Louisiana. And this is a pretty serious threat. Tropical storms in this region this time of year are nothing to be trifled with. The water temperatures are very warm, around 30 degrees Celsius. That's mid to upper 80s in terms of Fahrenheit. Plenty warm enough to kick off a tropical storm. Now, the upper level wind environment is not the most amazing thing in the world. We do have building high pressure, again, that trough. So we'll back this up to last night, where that trough was really pronounced over the region. You can see it here. But as we go into Saturday and then eventually into Sunday, the trough is completely gone. Upper level high is building in over our system, and this is going to lighten that upper level wind shear that was ripping the storm apart and pushing it around. We're starting to see that come out, and now we're starting to see a little bit better conditions for this wave. Now the question really is, how is this high oriented? So we look at the GFS here on by Tuesday, Monday, Tuesday, and the high is centered over right where the system is going to be. But as we go into Tuesday night into Wednesday, the high rotates more over northern Mexico, and we see pockets of heavier shear pickup along the coast. This could mean a storm forms, strengthens Monday night, Tuesday, but then begins to weaken Wednesday on approach to the coast in this upper level wind shear. The European kind of shows the same thing. This is the European valid for Tuesday afternoon. Again, the high center more over Mexico and stronger winds aloft. Now, the European forecasts a little bit more shear than the GFS does in terms of where it starts, but the overall magnitude isn't really as high with the stronger pockets of shear closer to the coast. And again, if the shear is not really there until the coast, then, well, how much of that can really impact the storm? So there's a lot of peculiarities of this one, and the bottom line is that a lot of rainfall is coming. This is the GFS precipitable water forecast, and you can see here we are looking at the tonight, and there's still a lot of dry air over the region from a high pressure cell that's still kind of set out over here. However, that's about to quickly change as you see tropical moisture surge in with these pockets of green here and that deep southeast flow, and the storm's still down here, but you can see all the southeast flow out ahead of it as that overall trough is just moving in, and that's going to return the moisture and return the rainfall. And you can see this moisture pouring onshore Sunday night, Monday, and even into Tuesday and Wednesday before the actual storm even really gets there on this model, which is late Tuesday night to early Wednesday. So a lot of rainfall coming. Rainfall totals are definitely going to be high for this event. Weather Prediction Center is showing anywhere 8-12 inches. GFS model kind of showing a little bit less, but still heavier in pockets. And the European a little bit lower too than the Weather Prediction Center. But I would lean towards the WPC forecast right now until we know more. And at least a foot of rain is coming for some folks. It's just hard to tell exactly who. It depends where the center of the storm kind of wants to track. But a lot of rainfall is coming, especially heavy in some locations, and we'll see how this plays out. But again, a significant threat for the Texas and Louisiana coastlines through the week this week. And again, it could be closer to a bona fide hurricane if the conditions really shape up. I still think like a non-major hurricane is probably the ceiling. I don't know if this would be able to get to a major hurricane status or not, but definitely wouldn't put a whole lot past the storm in the Gulf of Mexico this time of year. Not the time of year to be messing with these storms. So that's what I got on 94L. We're going to go ahead and look at the rest of the tropics, and we're going to start with this wave in the Bahamas that is expected to be there this week. The Hurricane Center finally put this on their map. We've been talking about this for days now. Hurricane Centers finally went ahead and put it on their map. 30% chance of development in the next 5 days. The wave is not in a great spot right now. It's currently located back across the central Atlantic. And if I go back to this map, you can barely see the outline of the wave right here tomorrow afternoon on the GFS. But as I go into Monday and Tuesday, you can see the wave kind of picks up and it turns out of the Gulf or out of the NDR and it comes up near the Bahamas. You can see a little bit more pronounced wave axis here on Tuesday. And then I go into Wednesday, Thursday, the GFS begins to actually show development of this wave near the Bahamas. Now from there, the question of where it goes north, where it goes to Florida, where it goes in between, we don't really know that yet. And we we really don't know how much this is going to develop. The GFS is aggressive with this, partially because it really picks up the moisture content. Notice how the wave, which would be in this region tomorrow afternoon, is really not that impressive. There's a whole lot of dry air with the wave, but then as we go into Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, all of a sudden, all this tropical moisture shows up almost out of nowhere. So I'm a little skeptical that a wave producing this limited amount of showers and storms is really going to be able to pick up that much moisture. Again, looking at the satellite presentation of the wave tonight, it's very weak. You also have an upper low in the region that may help pull some moisture up over it, but it's going to have to get itself together. But don't count it out either. This signal has been on these maps for over a week now, and we could have something to talk about off the coast of the southeast in the middle of the week with potential impacts this weekend. That's, northeast could be in play, the Carolinas could be in play, Florida certainly could be in play. There's a couple different solutions here. It depends a lot on how the high pressure builds back in behind Larry and maybe what this other system in the Gulf is doing to a degree. But there's a lot of factors at play here, and this wave needs to be watched carefully. All right, we go ahead and switch to Africa for our last two player. Well, almost last. I'm not going to talk about this much. It's just a non-tropical low near Portugal and Spain. I don't think anybody cares too much. Could be a name storm, but who cares? These two waves. All right, so there's two waves we're talking about. One off of Africa that's already left. It's this wave right here, and it's not looking very good today. This system had a pretty high chance it was going to develop. I think Hurricane Center was at 70 or 80%, and then they just kind of fell off on it. So it's definitely not looking as good as it was. Still has a 50% shot to develop, but what it looks more and more like now is this wave is going to leave the Cabo Verde Islands by tomorrow, and it's probably going to fall trapped to all this dry air and wind shear, and it's probably going to have a hard time. There's a pretty good southeast or northeast wind shear here, and there's a lot of dry air associated with that, and this wave probably going to lose its chance to develop, and unless it pops up in a hurry tonight, not even going to get named, which is tragic, but we don't care because it's one less wave we have to worry about. But what's coming behind that wave is actually of some concern, and that's this big blob right here you see leaving Africa. Now, until these storms get off of Africa, they always look kind of funny on infrared satellite, but bottom line is this is going to move off at a much lower latitude. Again, this wave came off way up here by the islands. This next wave is coming out much further south, and that southerly track puts it in much warmer water and allows us to kind of ride south of all the dry air and hostile winds down here in the tropical Atlantic, and it looks like our models are indicating that a fairly long track storm may develop. Now, late September, you can still get these kind of waves. They come off of Africa, they get rolling, and you get long track, what we call MDR or Cape Verde type hurricanes, where they come off the coast and they develop and they run south for a long time. European model showing with a lot of ensemble confidence that a storm of some decent intensity, likely tropical storm or hurricane status, will be moving through this region by the middle of next week. And anything running this far south has a potential to move up and become an impact to the U.S. in some capacity. Again, it's far too early. This is thousands of miles away. Too early to call, but that could happen. GFS also shows that as well. The other thing that is an issue is this wave. We look at the weekly forecast and anomalous ridging off the coast of Canada and off the coast of the northern U.S. throughout much of this week. Anywhere in yellow is anomalously high pressure, and the general pattern looks like it's going to be ridging over this part of the Atlantic. So where we had storms like Larry, who turned and went like this, or well, really Larry was, more like this, but that's not going to happen this time because this big old high is sitting in the way. So these storms that come off are going to be more inclined to ride southward. Now, this wave we're talking about, the one off Africa, as I go into next week's forecast, you can see the high relents a little bit, but all this really does is open up the gate, and what you have now is the edge of a high pressure cell that's something like this, and it looks like the storms, that definitely points storms towards the U.S. in some capacity, but again, way too far out to call. It just looks like the overall pattern will be favorable. So we got to watch that wave carefully. We got to watch 94L for a big rainfall threat, and we also have the sneaky one that's going to come up near the Bahamas and the Caribbean, and that one will also have to be carefully watched next week. So we'll have two to monitor next week. One, so basically midweek, mid to late week, and then the following week is kind of how we're looking on these three waves right now. So a lot to we're watching a lot this week. You hear a lot more of me this week. And finally, we'll take you over to the Western Pacific, where we do have a lot of activity still. Invest near the coast of India, about to move ashore. And Typhoon Shanthu, the former super typhoon, peaked at 175-mile-an-hour winds yesterday, has weakened some and is now scraping Taiwan, where it looks like a direct landfall is probably going to be missed for the most part, except maybe the very northern tip of the island. And the system expected to move very close to the east coast of China, possibly near Shanghai, and could stall for several days before it finally moves away. It looks like a very serious flooding situation, very possible out there. But thankfully, the storm storm looks like it's on the way down as far as wind speed. Still very dangerous, 110 knots, about 125 miles an hour, top into Category 3. Nothing to sneeze at by any means, but definitely not the Category 5 monster it was. So that's what I got for you guys tonight on your tropical update. A lot to talk about, and we will talk more this week. So until then, stay safe. Thanks for watching, and have a good one.